Namah Shivaya.
Who helped in the birth of Shiva? If everything in this world has a beginning, who began the one called eternal? And if Shiva was never born in the way humans are born, what does that teach us about destiny and our own inner strength? These questions are not just religious questions. They are questions about cause, about destiny, and about whether we always need someone else to create our future. In many Hindu scriptures, such as the Shiva Purana and the Linga Purana, Shiva is described as Anadi, meaning without beginning, and Svayambhu, meaning self-manifested. This does not describe a biological birth. Instead, it presents a spiritual idea that Shiva was not created by another god. In the well-known Lingodbhava story, found in the Linga Purana, Shiva appears as an endless pillar of light before Lord Brahma and Lord Vishnu. They search for the top and bottom of this light, but cannot find its limits. This story is widely accepted in many Hindu traditions, though interpretations may vary across regions and schools of thought. In this video, we will carefully separate scriptural facts from personal reflection. We will explore what the texts actually say, where those ideas can be verified, and what they may mean for our understanding of destiny. We will also connect these teachings to real-life struggles, like feeling unsupported or waiting for someone to create our opportunities. If you stay until the end, you will not only understand the traditional answer to who helped in the birth of Shiva, but also gain a deeper insight into independence and responsibility. And if this kind of thoughtful, honest exploration speaks to you, consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel so we can continue learning together. When we ask, who helped in the birth of Shiva? The most honest place to begin is with the scriptures themselves. In major Hindu texts, such as the Shiva Purana and the Linga Purana, Shiva is not described as being born in the way humans are born. There is no story of a mother giving birth to him, and there is no creator god who makes him. Instead, these texts use words like Anadi, which means without beginning, and Ananta, which means without end. They also use the term Svayambhu, meaning self-manifested. These words are important because they show that Shiva is presented as eternal, not created at a certain time. One well-known story that supports this idea is the Lingodbhava episode found in the Linga Purana. In this story, Shiva appears as an endless pillar of light. Lord Brahma travels upward to find the top of the light, and Lord Vishnu travels downward to find its base. Neither of them can find the beginning or the end. The message of this story, according to traditional interpretation, is that Shiva's nature cannot be measured or limited. It is important to say clearly that this is a mythological and symbolic story, not a historical event in the modern scientific sense. Different Hindu traditions may explain this story in slightly different ways, but the core idea of Shiva as eternal is widely accepted in Shiva traditions. This leads us to a simple but powerful fact. According to these Puranic texts, no one helped in Shiva's birth because he is not described as having a birth at all. From a philosophical view, this challenges our normal way of thinking. We are used to believing that everything must have a starting point. Yet here, the scripture presents a being who is beyond that rule. Whether one sees this as literal truth or symbolic teaching, the clear scriptural position is that Shiva is beginningless. This forms the foundation for everything else we will explore about destiny and inner strength. After understanding that texts like the Shiva Purana describe Shiva as beginningless, we must ask why the human mind still searches for a creator behind every power. The truth is simple. Our thinking is built on cause and effect. From childhood, we learn that every action has a reason. A tree grows from a seed, a house is built by a builder, a child is born from parents. Because of this pattern, our mind feels uneasy when something is described as without beginning. This is not weakness, it is how human reasoning works. Even in science, researchers search for causes. For example, the Big Bang Theory explains the early expansion of the universe based on available evidence. However, scientists themselves admit that what came before the Big Bang is still uncertain. This shows that even modern science reaches limits when asking about absolute beginnings. This comparison is not to mix science and mythology, but to show that questions about origins are complex in many fields. In daily life, this cause and effect mindset also shapes how we think about success and destiny. When someone achieves something great, we often say, "Who supported them?" or "Who gave them a chance?" Support is important, but this thinking can slowly turn into dependency. We begin to believe that without powerful help, nothing can start. This is where the scriptural idea of Shiva as Svayambhu, or self-manifested, challenges our normal thinking. It presents a symbol of existence that does not depend on another source. According to traditional Shiva belief, this does not deny relationships or cooperation in life, but it shows that ultimate reality is not caused by something else. It is also important to acknowledge that not all Hindu traditions explain these ideas in exactly the same way. Some focus more on symbolic meaning, while others hold a more devotional view. Still, the central message remains clear in the texts. Shiva is described as beyond ordinary cause and effect. When we reflect on this, we are invited to examine our own belief that everything meaningful in our lives must come from outside support. Sometimes, the deeper source of strength may already exist within us. One of the most important stories connected to the question of Shiva's birth is the Lingodbhava episode, described in the Linga Purana and also mentioned in the Shiva Purana. In this story, a powerful disagreement rises between Lord Brahma and Lord Vishnu. Both wish to know who is supreme. At that moment, an endless pillar of blazing light appears before them. This pillar has no visible top and no visible bottom. Brahma takes the form of a swan and flies upward to search for the top. Vishnu takes the form of a boar and travels downward to search for the base. They search for a long time, but neither can find the beginning or the end of the light. Finally, they return and accept that the pillar is beyond their limits. Then Shiva reveals himself from that light, showing that his nature cannot be measured. According to traditional interpretation, this story is not meant to be taken as a physical event in history, but as a symbolic teaching. The endless pillar represents the infinite nature of reality. The failure of Brahma and Vishnu to find its limits shows the limits of knowledge and power when mixed with pride. Some versions of the story even describe Brahma falsely claiming that he found the top, which leads to consequences. Scholars note that these variations appear in different regional tellings and details may differ, but the central message remains the same. Shiva is beyond measurement and beyond ego. When we bring this lesson into real life, we can see how ego often creates conflict. In workplaces, leaders sometimes compete for recognition instead of working together. In families, arguments grow because each person wants to prove they are right. The Lingodbhava story quietly reminds us that true greatness does not need to compete. The idea that Shiva has no beginning and no end also suggests that ultimate truth is not limited by personal pride. While this is a spiritual interpretation and not a scientific claim, it offers a meaningful reflection. The story teaches that when we accept our limits and let go of ego, we move closer to wisdom and peace. To understand destiny more deeply, we must look at how Hindu philosophy explains action and result. One key idea is karma, a word that simply means action. In many Hindu texts, including the Bhagavad Gita, karma is described as the law that every action has a consequence. This does not mean that everything in life is fixed or controlled by fate. Instead, it suggests that our choices matter. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna teaches Arjuna about doing one's duty with effort and awareness, without being attached only to the result. This shows a balance between destiny and free will. While past actions may shape present conditions, present actions shape the future. Scholars and teachers often explain this as a combination of karma, past influence, and purushartha, personal effort. These ideas are discussed in many traditional commentaries, though interpretations may differ between schools of thought. This balance helps answer a common fear. Is my life already decided? Hindu philosophy does not give a simple yes or no. Instead, it presents a layered view. Some conditions may come from past causes, but how we respond remains in our hands. For example, two students may be born into similar families, but their daily effort, discipline, and focus can lead to different outcomes. One may prepare seriously for exams, while the other may avoid study. Their results will likely reflect their actions. This simple example shows how destiny and effort work together. When we connect this to the idea that Shiva is described as beginningless in texts like the Shiva Purana, we see a deeper message. Shiva does not depend on a creator, and in a symbolic way, this reminds us that we should not depend only on luck. While circumstances matter, effort remains powerful. It is important to be clear that this is a philosophical reflection, not a scientific formula. Different Hindu traditions may explain karma in slightly different ways. Still, the central message is consistent. Action has value, responsibility matters, and destiny is not an excuse for inaction. To understand the deeper meaning of unborn, we can look at the teachings found in the Upanishads. These texts, which are part of the Vedic tradition, describe the Atman, or true self, as unborn, eternal, and not destroyed when the body ends. For example, ideas about the eternal self are also echoed in the Bhagavad Gita, where it says, "The self is not born and does not die." These teachings are philosophical and spiritual in nature. They are not biological claims. When later Hindu traditions connect Shiva with this ultimate reality, they are expressing a symbolic truth. Shiva represents the timeless principle behind all change. Not every Hindu school explains this in the same way, but many agree that Shiva, in a higher sense, points to something beyond physical birth. This is where the meaning of unborn becomes important. In simple terms, it does not mean that a figure appeared from nowhere in a physical sense. It means that the ultimate reality is not limited by time. Just as space does not have a visible starting line, the spiritual principle described in the Upanishads is said to be beyond beginning and end. As a helpful analogy, modern science tells us that energy cannot be created or destroyed, only transformed. This scientific idea is not the same as the spiritual teaching, but it helps us imagine how something can exist without a clear starting point. It is important to say clearly that this comparison is only an analogy, not proof. When we reflect on this teaching in daily life, it can change how we see ourselves. If the deepest part of who we are is not limited by our failures, then we are more than our past mistakes. Many people feel trapped by labels given to them in childhood or by one bad decision. The Upanishadic idea of an unborn self suggests that there is something deeper and more stable within us. This is a spiritual interpretation, not a medical or scientific claim. Still, it offers comfort and strength. Just as Shiva is described as beyond birth in texts like the Shiva Purana, we too may carry a deeper identity that is not defined only by outer events. In real life, one of the biggest struggles people face is the habit of waiting. Many wait for the right person to support them, the right opportunity to appear, or the right time to begin. This mindset can quietly create dependence. We start believing that unless someone powerful helps us, nothing meaningful can happen. While support from family, teachers, and friends is valuable and often necessary, complete dependence can stop growth. This is not a religious claim, but a common life observation. Psychologists often speak about learned helplessness, a state where people feel they have no control even when they actually do. This shows how mindset shapes action. When we return to the scriptural idea found in texts like the Shiva Purana that Shiva is Svayambhu, or self-manifested, we see a powerful symbol. The text does not suggest that humans do not need community. Instead, it presents Shiva as a figure who does not depend on another creator. In devotional traditions, this expresses divine independence. In philosophical reflection, it can inspire personal responsibility. It is important to say clearly that this is an interpretation, not a direct command from the scripture telling people to reject help. Hindu teachings generally value community, family, and guidance. The symbol simply reminds us not to believe that our destiny must be handed to us. Think about a small business owner who starts with limited money and no public attention. Many well-known companies today began in small rooms or garages. Their founders did not wait for perfect support before taking the first step, or consider an artist who practices daily even when no one is watching. Recognition may come later, but the effort begins alone. These are real-world patterns we can observe without exaggeration. Success often begins with personal action. The deeper message is about responsibility. If we always blame fate or other people for our lack of progress, we give away our power. While conditions may not always be fair, our response still belongs to us. The image of Shiva as beginningless can remind us that strength does not always need external permission to exist. This is a motivational reflection, not a scientific rule. Still, it encourages courage. Start where you are, act with what you have, and stop waiting for someone else to create your beginning. The final chapter brings all the ideas together and helps us understand the fire within, the inner power that can guide our lives. According to texts like the Shiva Purana, Shiva is described as eternal, beginningless, and self-manifested. This means no one helped in his birth because he exists beyond time and external influence. While the story is mythological and symbolic, just as Shiva's light has no beginning or end, each of us carries the potential to grow, act, and transform without waiting for someone else to start us on our path. This does not deny the importance of support, guidance, or community, but it emphasizes that the deepest power originates within. Different Hindu traditions may tell this story in varied ways, and some focus more on devotional aspects, while others highlight philosophical meaning. Still, the central message is consistent. Ultimate strength is not dependent on external help. This idea can change the way we view challenges. In real life, many people wait for the perfect moment, the perfect mentor, or the perfect chance. A student might postpone studying because they lack guidance. An entrepreneur may delay starting a project because they think support is needed. And a creative person may hesitate to express ideas until someone else validates them. Observing these patterns shows how often we limit ourselves by waiting for external permission. The symbolic pillar of light in the Lingodbhava story can serve as a personal reminder. It represents the infinite potential that exists within us. When we face uncertainty or setbacks, understanding that our capability is not defined solely by circumstances allows us to take action. Personal transformation begins with accepting responsibility, understanding our limits, and yet moving forward despite them. This is not a magical shortcut, but a mindset that empowers consistent effort and awareness. By reflecting on Shiva's self-manifested nature, we see that destiny is not merely inherited or handed down. It is realized through action, awareness, and courage. Life's challenges, whether large or small, become opportunities to recognize our inner fire. Like Shiva's endless light, our potential may not have a visible beginning, but it can shine continuously if we take responsibility for our growth. This insight invites us to embrace uncertainty, act with intention, and create meaning through our choices, reminding us that the most important help we can receive often comes from ourselves.